Traffic, it is the bane of our existence. We have to deal with it, and everywhere we look, we have traffic issues. Good day to have Robert Thomson on. You know him as Dr. Gridlock from the Washington Post. Good morning, Robert. How are you?
Good morning. I'm just swell. How are you guys doing?
Well, I mean, better than the people on the Northern Beltway right now, where
sure.
on the inner loop they have a truck pull that fell over and rolled over, and it backed up traffic like about 2.5 miles. It seems like, I mean, just before we move on to the other issues of the day, it seems like we hear about a lot of accidents in that particular stretch of the Beltway, the so-called roller coaster part of the Beltway. Is there any thought about ever doing anything to sort of straighten out that part of the Beltway?
That part of the Beltway needs absolutely no help to get really, really bad with things like these accidents. But no, there aren't any plans at all to do anything about that zone. And I think it's always amazing to people when I tell them that that's one of the safer parts of the Beltway in Maryland.
Because you have to go slow down there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting enough. Okay, so let's talk about, you were at a hearing last night about I-66. Okay, what are they talking about here, and is it a good idea or bad idea what they're proposing?
Well, I think it's a good idea, but there are plenty of people who write into me and say exactly the opposite. And a lot of those folks were at the hearing last night. They live near I-66, particularly in the Vienna and Dunloring areas right near where I-66 meets the Beltway. And they just hate this plan because it's going to take some of their properties, it's going to infringe on others, and they just don't like the idea of the air pollution that they expect, the noise pollution. So they would just prefer that everybody go away and leave them alone.
Well, yeah, but obviously something has to be done. I mean, that is the big friction here, isn't it, Robert Thomson? Is that everyone wants traffic to improve, but nobody wants to go through what it takes to expand the roads.
You got it exactly right, and this is very typical what we're seeing with these 4 hearings on the I-66 plan. There are thousands and thousands of commuters who would benefit from an improvement on I-66, and there are a few hundred folks who would really, really be hurt by it. Those are the folks who come to these hearings.
Absolutely.
Well, but this is why governments have public domain rights on things like this. It does improve the state and the functioning of the community. Who's the loudest voice here? Is it the homeowners who will be displaced who don't want this, or the homeowners, if they're not going to be displaced, they just don't want the noise of the expanded roads in their backyard?
Traffic, right.
Or is it the environmentalists? The environmentalists often are against these expansions because it's they're afraid it's going to kill some insect that needs protection.
Oh, sure. The environmentalists are in on this one, but their pitch is basically what we call the smart growth approach, that they don't like the idea of expanding the capacity of I-66. They would much prefer that people live closer to where they work so we wouldn't have to go through all this paving in the first place.
I'm sort of been fascinated by this concept that some people are saying that you can't build roads and you can't build enough roads to grow out of the traffic problem. That every time you build a new road, you also then set in place a set of policies that will allow more homes to be built, more population to be moving into a particular area, and that you never really can get out of it, that we are just always destined to be in a situation where you don't build a lot of roads and roads don't solve the problem.
Well, traffic engineers certainly have gotten a lot more sophisticated since the days of the interstate highway building program, just about everywhere now. Certainly in urban areas, the idea is that you try to get more out of what you already have. That's why we hear so much about hot lanes and the various proposals to better manage traffic. It's not just homeowners. Traffic engineers themselves don't like the idea of widening highways. I had a commuter write into me very recently and say, why don't we solve the I-66 problem by double-decking I-66, which has been done in other places.
Right.
But again, traffic managers don't like those ideas. They don't like the idea of just adding more lanes because they know ultimately they'll just have to go back and do the same sort of thing all over again and disrupt another generation.
They'd rather try to modify our behavior and get us to, ride our bikes into work or something. Dr. Thomson, there's all, as challenging as it is to get a new road built or a road widened, Virginia does seem to be doing more of it in the area than any other jurisdiction. Yeah. And there's a new road that's about to open now, or did it just open this week in Northern Virginia?
Yes, this is
the Gainesville Interchange.
Yeah, exactly. This is a very notorious spot for the region's commuters. It's been a bottleneck for, I guess, decades. And Virginia has been in the process over the last few years of untangling the spot around where I-66 and Route 29 come together. This affects tens of thousands of travelers. And Virginia's where the action is. As you said, there's hardly anything going on in Maryland right now in terms of road improvement.
Is there a reason for that? Is it just because the community in Maryland is just so much more against any sort of growth or expansion?
Well, it's definitely a different philosophy. The way Maryland would put it, or at least Maryland governments in recent years, is that they want to devote their resources to maintaining what they already have rather than expanding the capacity. But that works up to a point, but eventually you've got to do something to expand capacity.
Yeah, like rapid bus. That seems to be a great solution.
Well, in particular, you got to do something around the American Legion Bridge and the west side of the Beltway.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, it's always a topic of conversation, and everybody wants to talk about it. I think it's very interesting you point out everybody wants to talk about it until it comes to actually solving the problem, and then it's like NIMBY, 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 not in my backyard.
That's why I get letters.
That's right. You have job security.
Dr. Gridlock, really quickly, we're almost out of time, but I see that the NTSB has released the agenda for hearings on the Metro smoke incident at L'Enfant Plaza in January. It's set for June 23rd and June 24th. When I heard that it was happening June 20th, I was kind of surprised that they've waited 6 months until after this horrible incident to have these hearings. Why have they not had hearings before now? Why such a delay?
Well, it does seem to many of us who ride Metro like an excruciatingly long time before we get any results. But this is pretty typical of how NTSB operates. Nothing unusual going on here. They've been investigating. We're going to hear the conclusions of their investigation during these hearings.
I see. Compared to in the private sector, if a major disastrous incident occurred at a private corporation, I would think that the investigation would have gone a little bit quicker and a little more efficiently. I could be wrong, but you're right. This is how they operate.
All right. Well, listen, Dr. Gridlock, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Gridlock.